The rhythmic clatter of the wooden shuttle, a heartbeat against the humid Chiang Mai air, was the only sound Anong truly owned. Here, in the shaded space beneath her traditional teak house, surrounded by hanging skeins of indigo, saffron and lac-red silk, she found her centre. Her hands, stained faintly blue at the cuticles, moved with an inherited grace, guiding the threads across the loom, weaving patterns born from Lana tradition and her own quiet soul. At 49, Anong had thought this second marriage to Somchai, a man 12 years her senior, would bring a gentle companionship, a shared appreciation for the beauty that still lingered in this rapidly changing city. She had hoped for peace. Somchai entered the workshop, the scent of his expensive cologne momentarily overpowering the earthy fragrance of raw silk and dye plants. He stood, hands clasped behind his back, surveying her work. "Exquisite, Anong, truly," he murmured, his voice smooth as polished rosewood, "but perhaps a little intricate for the market. Simpler designs might sell better. Tourists appreciate clarity." He gestured vaguely. "And this area, darling, it's getting rather cluttered. We must maintain a certain standard, mustn't we?" He smiled, a brief flash of white teeth. "Don't forget dinner tonight, the Wongs, important connections. Wear that blue silk I bought you, the modern one. It suits your complexion better than these traditional colours." Anong's fingers stilled on the shuttle. A familiar tightness coiled in her stomach. His praise always came with a barb. His suggestions felt like directives. She had woven the piece he referred to, a simple length of sapphire silk, because he'd insisted, but it felt alien against her skin, lacking the soul of the naturally dyed fabrics she understood. "The indigo piece I finished last week might be more appropriate, Somchai," she said softly, keeping her eyes on the loom. "It's more formal. Nonsense," he waved a dismissive hand. "Modern elegance, Anong. That's the image we need to project." He glanced at his watch. "Be ready by 7. He turned, leaving the scent of his cologne lingering like a subtle stain in her sanctuary. Anong closed her eyes, listening to the distant chime of temple bells from Wat Umong drift through the trees. She had remarried hoping for a partner, someone to walk beside her. Instead, she increasingly felt like an ornament he was trying to polish, subtly reshaping her to fit his vision of a suitable wife. The quiet dissolution of her first marriage, years of polite distance, seemed almost preferable to this constant, low-level erosion of self. Her daughter, studying design in London, urged her to be happy, to embrace this new chapter. But the pages felt wrong, the narrative dictated by someone else. She picked up the shuttle again, the familiar weight a small comfort. Her threads knew their path. Why didn't she? Current part characters, 2,977 total characters, 2,977. The restaurant Somchai had chosen was in the trendy Nimmenhemen area, all gleaming surfaces, muted lighting, and hushed conversations. Anong felt conspicuously uncomfortable in the bright synthetic blue silk dress. It seemed to absorb the artificial light, unlike her own hand-woven silks that held the sun and shadows within their fibres. Somchai, however, navigated the space with practiced ease, greeting acquaintances with a carefully calibrated warmth, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. Mr. and Mrs. Wong were impeccably dressed, their smiles polite but assessing. Somchai introduced Anong with a flourish. "My wife, Anong, a rather gifted traditional weaver. It's a charming hobby she keeps." Anong offered away, her cheeks warming at the word hobby. It wasn't a hobby, it was her lifeblood, her heritage, her art. Mrs. Wong leaned forward, genuine interest sparking in her eyes. "Lana weaving, how fascinating. My grandmother had some beautiful pieces. The symbolism in the patterns is so intricate, isn't it?" Anong felt a flicker of connection. "Yes, indeed," she began, eager to share her knowledge. "For example, the Dokfiken flower pattern often symbolizes longevity and prosperity, while the Lai Nam Lai flowing water motif represents—" "Ah, yes, the symbolism," Somchai interrupted smoothly, placing a hand over Anong's. "It's all quite lovely, isn't it? Mostly decorative these days, of course. Anong has such a feel for the colours, don't you, darling?" He smiled at her, a look that brooked no contradiction. Anong's explanation died on her lips. He continued, steering the conversation towards business, his knowledge of traditional art suddenly becoming authoritative, peppered with anecdotes she knew were embellished or inaccurate. She watched him perform, skillfully weaving a narrative that positioned him as a cultured connoisseur, with her as a quaint, silent accessory. Later, when Mr. Wong asked directly about a specific weaving technique Anong was known for, she answered quietly. Somchai immediately followed up. Anong sometimes gets lost in the technicalities. What she means is... He rephrased her answer, simplifying it, making it sound less significant. The warmth in Anong's cheeks turned to a burning heat of humiliation. She focused on the intricate pattern of the water-glass condensation on the tablecloth. On the drive home, silence stretched taut between them in the air-conditioned car. Anong finally broke it, her voice barely a whisper. "Somchai, why did you interrupt me like that? You made it sound as though I didn't know my own craft." He glanced at her, his expression one of mild surprise. "Darling, don't be so sensitive. I was simply trying to keep the conversation accessible for the Wongs. Business people aren't interested in the finer points of weaving. I was helping you fit in, making you seem more relatable." He reached over and patted her knee. "You worry too much. It was a successful evening." Wong seemed impressed. Anong turned her face towards the window, watching the familiar streets of Chiang Mai blur past. Relatable or diminished? His words meant to soothe felt like another layer of varnish, sealing her true self beneath a glossy, acceptable facade. The blue silk felt heavy, suffocating. That night, sleep eluded her. The echo of Somchai's smooth dismissals replayed in her mind, each repetition chipping away at something vital within her. This wasn't companionship. It was erasure. The weeks that followed settled into a pattern of subtle encroachments. Anong had long planned a visit to her friend Mali's batik workshop, eager for the easy camaraderie and the vibrant chaos of Mali's creative space. The day before, Somchai announced he'd scheduled a meeting for her with a potential supplier of modern synthetic yarns he thought she should explore. "Expand your horizons, darling," he'd said brightly, ignoring her quiet protest that she only worked with natural fibers. When Anong mentioned Mali later, he frowned slightly. Mali is very talented, of course, but perhaps a little rough around the edges. Her lifestyle is quite different. It might be better to associate with people who understand our position now, Anong. The implication hung in the air. Mali, with her paint-stained hands and outspoken independence, was not suitable company. Anong felt a pang of guilt as she cancelled on Mali, offering a vague excuse. The distance felt like a physical ache. Somchai began spending more time in her workshop, ostensibly showing interest, but his presence felt invasive. He'd pick up a finished piece, tilting his head. "Lovely colour, Anong, but perhaps too muted. A brighter palette would have more commercial appeal." He brought home a factory-made wall hanging, a garish explosion of chemical dyes depicting elephants and temples. "Look at this, darling, so vibrant. Perhaps you could try something like this?" He placed it prominently near her loom, a constant, jarring reminder of his aesthetic preferences. Anong found herself retreating, weaving mostly in the quiet hours of the early morning before he woke, or late at night after he slept. The patterns she wove became denser, more complex, the colours deeper, almost defiant. Her loom became less a sanctuary and more a silent battleground. One afternoon, Somchai helpfully decided to reorganize her workspace while she was out buying supplies. She returned to find her carefully sorted skeins of hand-dyed silk moved, her weaving tools rearranged, a neat sterile order imposed on her creative clutter. "Doesn't this look much better?" He beamed, clearly expecting praise, much more professional. Anong stared at the unfamiliar tidiness, feeling a wave of disorientation. It wasn't her space anymore. It was his interpretation of what her space should be. She spent hours putting everything back, the simple act feeling like reclaiming stolen territory. The anxiety began to manifest physically. Headaches became frequent, a dull throb behind her eyes. Fatigue settled deep in her bones, a wariness that sleep couldn't seem to touch. She started keeping a small, hidden notebook, sketching designs that felt wilder, freer than what she allowed herself to weave. Sometimes, late at night, she'd write down Somchai's phrases. "Don't be so sensitive. I'm only trying to help, for our image," staring at the words until they solidified into the manipulations they were. Seeing them on paper made them harder to dismiss. Current part characters 3,513, total characters 1,256. One sweltering afternoon, seeking refuge from the oppressive atmosphere in her own home, Anong slipped out and made her way to Mali's studio. The contrast was immediate. Mali's space, tucked down a leafy soy near the Meiping River, exploded with colour and life. Bolts of wax-patterned cotton were draped everywhere, the air thick with the scent of hot wax and dyes. Mali, her hands stained a vibrant turquoise, greeted Anong with a warm, encompassing hug. "Anong, I was wondering when you'd escape the palace." Mali teased gently, her eyes sharp and observant. She saw the shadows under Anong's eyes, the slight tremor in her hands. She poured them both glasses of iced lemongrass tea, settling onto a low stool amidst the cheerful clutter. Anong found herself pouring out her frustrations. Somchai's constant critiques disguised as helpfulness, his dismissal of her work, the suffocating pressure to conform to his image, the rearranged workshop. She didn't use words like abuse or control, not yet, but the narrative of her shrinking world was clear. Mali listened patiently, her expression growing serious. When Anong finished, twisting a loose thread on her cotton blouse, Mali reached out and covered Anong's hand with her own warm, stained one. "Anong," she said, her voice firm but kind. "This man, he doesn't see you. He sees a reflection he wants to polish. You're weaving. It's not a hobby, it's your soul. It's Lana history breathing through your fingers. He has no right to diminish that. He has no right to diminish you." Anong felt tears prickle behind her eyes. Hearing her own unspoken fears validated aloud was both painful and profoundly relieving. "But Malay," she whispered, the cultural imperative of Kreng Jai, of avoiding confrontation, deeply ingrained. "He's my husband. I chose this. Maybe I'm too sensitive." "Sensitive? Anong, you are perceptive. You feel things deeply. That's why your art is so powerful. Don't let him convince you that your feelings are wrong. Harmony is important, yes, but not at the cost of your own spirit. What use is a perfectly smooth surface if underneath everything is dying?" Mali squeezed her hand. "Remember who you were before him? Remember the strength it took to raise your daughter, to build your workshop. That woman is still inside you. Don't let him extinguish her light." Anong looked around Mali's vibrant studio, the bold patterns, the unapologetic splashes of colour, the creative energy humming in the air. It felt like breathing again after being underwater. She thought of her hidden notebook, the defiant sketches, the list of Somchai's suffocating phrases. Mali was right. This wasn't harmony. It was suppression. The conversation didn't offer easy answers, but it planted a seed of resolve. She left Mali's studio walking a little taller, the oppressive weight on her chest momentarily lifted, replaced by a fragile, burgeoning anger. She deserved to breathe. She deserved to weave her own life. The path forward was unclear, terrifying even, but for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of her old self, the resilient woman Mali remembered. The fight, she realized, had already begun, quietly within the tangled threads of her own heart. The upcoming Chiang Mai Artisan Fair became Anong's focus, a beacon in the encroaching gloom. It wasn't about sales, though recognition was welcome. It was about reclaiming her identity as an artist, standing amongst her peers, presenting work that was unequivocally hers. She poured her energy into a new piece, a large wall hanging that depicted the sacred Doi Suthep mountain rising above swirling mists, woven not just with silk, but with her rediscovered resilience. The colours were deep and resonant. Forest greens, earthy browns, sky blues, shot through with threads of defiant gold. The process was meditative, each pass of the shuttle a small act of assertion. Her workshop, once again her sanctuary, hummed with quiet purpose. She mentioned the fair to Somchai casually, focusing on the practicalities of transport and setup. He seemed preoccupied, nodding absently. Fine, Anong. Just ensure it doesn't interfere with anything important." His vagueness felt like a temporary reprieve. A few days before the event, as Anong was carefully rolling the finished tapestry onto a protective bamboo pole, Somchai entered the workshop, holding his phone. His expression was one of calculated importance. "Anong, good news. I've managed to secure an invitation for us to join the Lertsarifan family for a private retreat this weekend, up in my rim. It's a fantastic opportunity, potential investors for my new venture. Absolutely crucial for our future." He beamed, clearly expecting her to share his enthusiasm. Anong's heart sank. The fair. The same weekend. It couldn't be a coincidence. She looked from his expectant face to the tapestry, the culmination of weeks of emotional and artistic labour. The choice was stark, unavoidable. The old Anong, the one conditioned to prioritise harmony and her husband's needs above all else, would have acquiesced, swallowing her disappointment, weaving another layer of resentment into her soul. But the conversation with Mali echoed in her mind. What use is a perfectly smooth surface if underneath everything is dying? She took a slow, deliberate breath, the scent of raw silk filling her lungs. She met Somchai's gaze directly, her voice quiet but steady, devoid of the usual hesitation. "Somchai, that sounds like a wonderful opportunity for you, but I cannot go." He blinked, surprised. "Cannot go? Anong, don't be ridiculous. This is important." "Yes," she agreed calmly, "and so is the artisan fair. I am participating. My display is confirmed. My tapestry is ready." She gestured towards the piece leaning against the wall. Somchai's smile vanished, replaced by a chilling stillness. His eyes narrowed. "Participating? I thought we agreed that was just a little side interest. This retreat is business. It concerns our standing, our finances." "It concerns your business, Somchai," Anong corrected gently but firmly. "My weaving is my work. This fair is important to me." His face flushed dark red. The polished veneer cracked. "This work, as you call it, is becoming an embarrassment. A wife of my standing, selling trinkets in a market, I forbid it, Anong. You will come with me to my rim." He took a step towards the tapestry, his hand half raised as if to dismiss it, or worse. Anong moved instinctively, placing herself between him and her creation. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but something else was stronger, a deep, unshakable sense of self-preservation. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't need to. The power was in the quiet finality of her decision. "No, Somchai." The words hung in the suddenly still air of the workshop, simple, absolute. "I will not be forbidden. This tapestry, this fair, they are part of my life. A part you have tried to diminish, to control, just as you have tried to control me." She saw a flicker of disbelief in his eyes, then pure, cold anger. "How dare you?" he hissed, his voice low and venomous. "After everything I've given you, the status, the comfort, you repay me with this defiance? This ingratitude?" "You offered companionship, Somchai," Anong replied, her voice gaining strength, fueled by months, perhaps years, of suppressed truth. "But you demanded compliance. You wanted a reflection, not a partner. You tried to smooth away my edges, dilute my colours, silence my voice." She gestured around the workshop, at the threads, the loom, the tangible evidence of her identity. "My hands know their own way, Somchai. They know the patterns, the textures, the stories they need to tell. And my life will find its own way too." He stared at her, momentarily speechless, confronted not by hysterics or accusations, but by a quiet, unyielding certainty he couldn't manipulate or dismiss. The carefully constructed world he inhabited, built on image and control, seemed to tremble. He saw not the pliable, sensitive woman he thought he could mould, but a stranger looking back at him with clear, resolute eyes. "I will be at the fair," Anong continued, each word deliberate, "and afterwards I will be finding my own place. This arrangement, this marriage, it is over. I cannot live as a reflection any longer. I need to live as myself." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of Chiang Mai life outside the workshop walls. Somchai's anger seemed to curdle into something else, a kind of bewildered fury, the narcissistic injury of losing control. He searched for words, threats, manipulations, but found none that could penetrate the calm certainty emanating from Anong. He saw the intricate tapestry leaning against the wall, no longer just threads and colours, but a symbol of her unbreakable spirit, a declaration of independence he could not unravel. He turned abruptly, the polished facade crumbling, and stormed out of the workshop, leaving Anong standing alone amidst her silks, trembling slightly, but breathing freely for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The final thread of their shared life had been decisively cut. The morning of the artisan fair dawned bright and clear, the last vestiges of the rainy season washed away, leaving the Chiang Mai air fresh and scented with damp earth and frangipani. Anong arrived early, her small truck carefully loaded. Setting up her stall felt like a ritual of reclamation. She unrolled the Doi Suthep tapestry, its colours vibrant in the morning light, and hung it as the centrepiece. Arranging her smaller pieces, scarves dyed with indigo and mango bark, table runners woven with traditional diamond motifs felt deliberate, each placement an assertion of her presence. Mali appeared, her arms full of colourful batik cushions to brighten Anong's display. "Sawadeka superstar," she beamed, her energy infectious. "It looks wonderful, Anong, truly." She helped Anong arrange the last few items, her easy chatter a comforting balm. Seeing her work displayed openly, surrounded by fellow artisans, Anong felt a quiet sense of belonging she hadn't realised she'd missed so acutely. People began to drift through the fair. Some stopped, drawn by the intricate detail and rich colours of her weaving. Anong found herself talking about her process, her inspiration, the history embedded in the Lana patterns, her voice clear and confident. A French couple lingered long over the Doi Suthep tapestry, asking detailed questions. An older Thai woman recognised a specific motif from her childhood village, her eyes misting over. Each interaction was a small affirmation, a reminder of the value inherent in her craft, independent of Somchai's judgment. She made a few sales, the exchange of her work for money feeling clean and direct, entirely hers. But more valuable than the baht was the simple act of standing there, visible, authentic, unmediated. Later that day, Anong received a message from her daughter in London, a photo of a snowy street followed by words that warmed her more than the Chiang Mai sun. "Heard from Auntie Mali. So incredibly proud of you, Mum. Always knew you were strong. Sending all my love." Anong smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. Across town, in a sterile conference room at the Mai Rim Resort, Somchai attempted to charm potential investors, but his usual smooth confidence seemed forced, his attention fractured. An image kept intruding, Anong standing resolute in her workshop, the quiet power in her eyes, the undeniable statement of the tapestry behind her. He'd already begun constructing a narrative for his social circle, Anong's need for simpler pursuits, a mutual amicable parting, but the sting of her rejection, her utter refusal to be controlled, left a bitter taste, a crack in his carefully polished self-image. He was alone, surrounded by people, clutching at the superficial values that suddenly felt hollow. Weeks turned into a month. Anong found a small, simple apartment closer to the old city, with good light and space for her loom. Moving out of the house she had briefly shared with Somchai felt less like an ending, and more like stepping back into her own skin. Her workshop beneath the old teak house remained her primary creative space, rented now directly from the landlord who vaguely knew Somchai but seemed uninterested in the marital drama. It felt lighter, cleansed, the oppressive weight of Somchai's presence, his unspoken expectations, his cologne, all gone. She established a new rhythm. Mornings were for weaving, the clatter of the loom a steady pulse in her quiet life. Afternoons were often spent sketching new designs, exploring the city's temples for inspiration, or sharing tea and conversation with Mali. She reconnected with other artisans she hadn't seen much during her marriage, finding warmth and support within the creative community. One afternoon, while sketching near Wat Rampong, observing the intricate carvings, she noticed a small, faded jasmine flower tattoo on her inner wrist. She'd gotten it impulsively years ago, after her first marriage ended, a symbol of hoped-for fragrance and freedom. Seeing it now felt significant. She began incorporating the delicate, 5-petaled jasmine motif into her new weaving designs, small, subtle but persistent. It was a nod to the past, but also a promise to herself for the future. She didn't seek out news of Somchai, but inevitably heard snippets through the city's grapevine. He was maintaining appearances, hosting dinners, talking loudly about his new ventures, occasionally seen with younger, more decorative companions. Anong felt no bitterness, only a distant pity and a profound sense of relief at her escape. His world of surfaces held no appeal. Her work began to reflect her newfound peace and quiet confidence. The colours remained rich, but there was a lightness, an openness in the patterns that hadn't been there before. She accepted a commission from a boutique hotel in the old city, weaving a series of panels for their lobby. Her designs, her colours, her terms. The project felt meaningful, a tangible sign of her re-established independence. She sat at her loom one evening, the setting sun casting long shadows across the workshop floor, turning the silk threads into rivers of gold and copper. The air was soft, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine from a nearby garden. The rhythmic sound of the shuttle was no longer just a sound she owned. It was the sound of her life, weaving forward, thread by thread, pattern by pattern, entirely, peacefully, her own. She paused, touching the woven jasmine flowers taking shape on the loom, and smiled faintly, looking out at the darkening Chiang Mai sky. The future was unwritten, but the pen, finally, was back in her hand. Anong continued to weave, not just silk, but the fabric of her new life. The quiet rhythm of her days was occasionally punctuated by moments that highlighted the profound shift within her. One day, sorting through old belongings, she found the blue silk dress Somchai had insisted she wear to the fateful dinner party. She held it up, the synthetic fabric feeling cold and alien against her skin. Without hesitation, she folded it neatly and placed it in a bag destined for donation. There was no anger, no lingering resentment, just a simple recognition that it belonged to a life that was no longer hers. Her relationship with Mali deepened. They fell into an easy routine of weekly lunches, sometimes at Mali's vibrant studio, sometimes exploring small local eateries. Anong hadn't felt comfortable suggesting when she was with Somchai. Mali never pried into the details of the separation, but celebrated Anong's growing confidence with quiet nods and warm smiles. "Your eyes are brighter these days, Anong," she remarked one afternoon over bowls of khao soi. "The shadows are gone." Anong realized it was true. The constant tension she had carried in her shoulders, the knot of anxiety in her stomach, they had dissolved, replaced by a sense of calm groundedness. The commission for the boutique hotel progressed well. The hotel manager, a young woman named Pim, treated Anong with genuine respect, admiring her artistry and trusting her vision. There were no subtle manipulations, no attempts to steer her towards something more commercial or modern. Collaborating with Pim felt easy, professional and validating. When the final panels were installed in the hotel lobby, intricate lana patterns interwoven with Anong's signature jasmine motif, they glowed with warmth and authenticity. Seeing her work displayed prominently, appreciated for its intrinsic beauty and skill, filled Anong with a quiet pride that was entirely her own. She even began tentatively teaching again. A young woman from the neighborhood, fascinated by the loom she saw through the open workshop doors, shyly asked if Anong would teach her. Sharing her knowledge, guiding the apprentice's uncertain hands, reminded Anong of her own value and the importance of passing on the tradition. It felt good to nurture creativity in someone else, a stark contrast to how her own had been stifled. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. There were moments of loneliness, flickers of uncertainty about the future, the financial realities of relying solely on her craft. But these feelings were different now, manageable, transient, hers to navigate. They were not imposed upon her by another's expectations or manipulations. One evening, sitting on the small balcony of her apartment, watching the lanterns glow along the Ping River, she received a video call from her daughter. Seeing her daughter's smiling face, hearing about her life in London, filled Anong with warmth. "You seem really happy, Mum," her daughter said, her voice filled with affection. "I am, darling," Anong replied, and the words felt utterly true. "I'm finding my way." She was no longer just weaving silk, she was weaving peace, weaving resilience, weaving a life that fit her perfectly, thread by colourful thread. The intricate pattern was still unfolding, but she held the shuttle firmly, her hands steady, her heart content. The final installation of the hotel lobby panels coincided with the Loy Krathong festival. Chiang Mai was alive with light and celebration. Anong, invited by Pim to a small reception at the hotel, stood quietly observing her work. The woven silk seemed to absorb the soft lantern light, the intricate patterns telling stories of heritage and resilience. Guests murmured appreciation, their words genuine, directed at her, the artist. There was no need for Somchai's interpretations or social manoeuvring. She was simply Anong, the weaver. Later that evening, she walked with Mali towards the Nawarat Bridge. The air was thick with the scent of incense and flowers, the sky punctuated by rising kom loi, fire lanterns carrying wishes towards the full moon. They bought simple krathongs made from banana leaves and flowers. Before launching hers onto the gentle current of the Mai Ping River, Anong closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't wish for anything grand. She simply gave thanks for the quiet strength she had found, for the freedom to breathe her own air, to weave her own path. She watched her small offering float away, its candle flame flickering amongst hundreds of others, a tiny point of light carrying away the remnants of past pain, leaving behind only peace. As they walked back